I enjoy working. I enjoy competing. I like starting things. And I love it when people tell me, oh, you can't do that. That industry can never be changed. It's like the watch insurance industry. I did change the watch insurance industry. I just started a company 2.5 years ago, and we're kicking ass. And I think it's because we took a different approach. We used technology. We told a story. We connected with watch owners. I'm a big watch collector. I know what collectors want, and we are building a franchise in the watch insurance.
Welcome to Innovate or Evaporate, the podcast where we explore the relentless pace of change and the innovators who drive it. Each episode, we dive deep into cutting-edge ideas, breakthrough technologies, and the fearless pioneers reshaping our world. Today's guest is Kevin O'Leary, entrepreneur, investor, and yes, the outspoken voice you know from Shark Tank. But this conversation goes far beyond the pitch room. Recorded with a live audience on the Expo Hall floor of the 2025 Rally Innovation Conference, Kevin opens up about the early media business that launched his empire, the founding stories behind Shark Tank, and the brutal truths about why most startup deals fall apart. If you're ready to be inspired, challenged, and reminded that competition is the heartbeat of innovation, stay tuned, because it's Innovate or Evaporate.
Welcome back to Innovate or Evaporate, where we explore the relentless pace of change and the innovators who drive it. Today, we are joined by Kevin O'Leary. Welcome, Kevin, to the show.
Great to be here.
So today, I'd love to get into kind of three big things. I'd like to talk about when you came out of college, when you entered the workforce, how your first business came about. I think you have some really interesting backstory I had never heard before. And then touch on some of the Shark Tank stories that we've talked about, and then get into maybe some high-level geopolitical concerns and observations that you have that I think are really fascinating. But I'd love to start back to your first company. And you talked about the television and some of the things you were doing in the first, what did you use the word this morning? The first format.
The first television format, right?
Yes, television format.
When you start out something in an industry that, because you're a young entrepreneur, it's your first time anyways, you start to learn a lot about the industry you're competing in. And, basically television is about making great content, which is great storytelling.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually something everybody should try, because storytelling is even how corporate America works today. If you think about the work that giant S&P 500 companies do, they want to tell their story. They want to build a community. They want to have a direct connection with their customers. And that's all storytelling through social media. Back then, it was just television. So now we have a lot more than just television in terms of reaching people. I think that's an important ingredient, but I learned then how to edit film and how to tell stories. And we created TV shows that eventually became very valuable. That's called a television format. And that provided the first funds for me to move into the software industry and, do the other things I did over time. If you're an entrepreneur, you're a serial entrepreneur. I've never heard or met one that just did one thing. You just keep going.
It's like a disease. I've started 8 companies, right? Actually, more than that. A few of them failed before they ever gave birth to them.
I enjoy working. I enjoy competing. I like starting things. And I love it when people tell me, oh, you can't do that. That industry can never be changed. It's like the watch insurance industry. I did change the watch insurance industry. I just started a company 2.5 years ago, and we're kicking ass. And I think it's because we took a different approach. We used technology. We told a story. We connected with watch owners. I'm a big watch collector. I know what collectors want. And we are building a franchise in the watch insurance.
So you're wearing 2 watches today.
Yeah.
They have quite a difference in price point.
Well, I always do that now.
Yes. Let's talk about that. Why is that?
Well, because somebody came to me on Shark Tank and said, hey, this thing you're doing with 2 watches, both of them are so expensive nobody can afford them. And some of them are one of a kind and nobody can even get one. And you're coming across like a real asshole. I said, well, I hadn't thought of it that way. And they said, well, that's how you look. You should be inspiring young people to get into watch collecting, because I think watches give you a marker that things that happen in your life. You buy a watch when you start a business, you have a child, they graduate or whatever, and you remember that every time you look at your wrist.
Yeah.
And so he was right. Actually, it was a she. And I did that now. So I'm wearing a $350,000 piece on my right today and a $2,000 piece on my left. They're both titanium watches. They're both beautiful. Some people prefer the $2,000 dial versus the $350. Doesn't matter. And of course, WonderCare, my insurance company, I needed that for watches like this. I have to insure all these watches.
So how'd that come about? The watch insurance. What did you guys do to disrupt
Well, I had 2 collections stolen, and I realized putting a watch on your home policy doesn't always work because you get the depreciated value in many of these policies. And you buy a Rolex for $17,000, 10 years later it's worth $58,000. That's what happens. And so you need to be insured for the replacement value. So we built WonderCare around the replacement value, and we scrape the data off the net every 24 hours from the auction market. So we know exactly what your watch is worth. And most people know themselves, but we let you insure it for whatever value you want. And the more you insure, the less it costs, that kind of thing. So I'm very happy because we generate that policy in 9 seconds using AI. You give us your zip code, you tell us where you live, we know exactly what the fraud rate is in your on your street.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love these stories about in 9 seconds, you know exactly what that value is. There was one of the lawn treatment companies, this is years ago, when Google Maps first came out, and they figured out how they could calculate the square footage of your yard and give you an immediate bid. And so the ability to act that fast with a potential customer like increases your hit rate by, I think it's like, if you respond within a minute, to an inbound, your response rate is in the 80s, or it's really high, and it goes quickly to like 5%.
So this is the good news about AI. Most of the subscription models that allow you to get to add technology like that have been dropping in price geometrically over the last 2 years.
Right.
You might be able to do that for $500 a month. And so there you have it. You're scraping data right off public information available on Google Maps, and you're using it to the benefit of your business to be able to quote. It's genius.
Yeah.
I mean, every industry can find value, and that's why I think AI is here to stay, and AI data centers are going to be needed, and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
So let's talk about Shark Tank then. So how did you shared some things earlier this morning about how Shark Tank came about that I wasn't aware of, kind of the history of Shark Tank, and then I'd like to get into a few anecdotes, from the show.
Yeah, the show started as a Japanese show format owned by Nippon Television Japan called Begging for Money. That was the literal translation of the Japanese title. And 4 rich Japanese guys, and people would get on their knees and beg for money. And it was a huge hit. And then they took it to England, and the British producer said, well, wait a second. Why would a guy just give someone begging for money? That happens on the street all day, doesn't work. And they said maybe they should be selling something like a business or an idea or a product or a service. And that they called Dragon's Den, and that took off. It was the first place it was done in London, and it's been on for 27 years. It's remarkable success.
It's amazing.
And here in America, we call it Shark Tank.
So how many, so all these folks come in, they give you the pitch, and so let's say you agree to 100 deals in a given year. I don't know how many you agree to in a given year, but how many of those deals, what happens after the show, right? Off camera, how many of those deals actually get done? Where do they fall apart? Are there any common threads where those deals fall apart that you can share?
Yeah, I mean, there's a due diligence period. Remember, we never saw the deal until you did on television.
Right.
So we get a few weeks to do due diligence. We get a dossier, a file on them. We start to do research. The deal falls apart when the entrepreneur is not honest and transparent.
Right.
And, we're going to find out everything by the time we invest. So if they didn't tell us something they should have, or they misrepresented, and usually it's sales, that's going to cost you dearly.
I always like to say the facts are good enough. Like, there's no need to embellish.
Yeah, if you're going to come out and say you're growing 40% a quarter, you better be growing 40% a quarter. If you say you did 2 million in sales last year, you better have done 2 million in sales. You can't lie about that. So, I mean, it's sort of, and if you get caught in a lie, nobody wants to invest in you. They'd rather get the truth, even if it's bad news.
Yeah, it's over. What are some of your favorite moments that, behind the scenes on Shark Tank? Some of the things that never made it to the public? That,
one of the things to know is that some of the pitches are an hour and 20 minutes long, and you only see 8 minutes on television, so they get edited down. But often, here's something, if you've ever been in a band, like a marching band in college or high school, you can't lock your knees for more than a few minutes or you're going to pass out.
Yes.
So we had a situation where an entrepreneur came out and pitched a deal, and the people behind him, he brought a team out, stood in formation for too long. And one of the big guys is about 6'7", real all-American. I think he was defense on the football team. I don't know. But he just fell right smack into the floor.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we had to stop rolling and get them a medic, and it would have been great TV, but we never aired it.
So let's talk about, we'll talk about this a little bit earlier on stage with the fireside chat, but I think it's so important from a geopolitical standpoint in staying competitive. And we talked about China, right? We talked about tariffs. We talked about AI. We talked about data centers. Let's dive deep into that for a minute, because sometimes I don't think that we have a pretty wonderful lifestyle here in the United States. And I think sometimes we tend to take that for granted. And there's other countries that are very serious about winning various competitive things, whether it's from a defense, a military standpoint, whether it's AI, et cetera. What are your thoughts on that?
I've been very fortunate. I've traveled the world. I've been everywhere. Not every society values life and liberty the way we do. They just don't.
Yep.
And if you're unlucky to be born into one of those places, your life is nowhere near of what it is here. And some societies have class structures where you can't advance just because where you're born and when you're born. We don't believe in that here. It doesn't matter where you came from. If you have a good idea, you can achieve the American dream. That's what the guarantee's always been. It's the same way today as it was 200 years ago. And so we should covet that. We should care a lot about that. But I always say that the number one export, America, is the American dream. And so the number one job of the president, whoever that person is to protect the American dream, because that's our number one export. And I think we're part of that with Shark Tank. We're on in 54 countries, and we really understand our role as ambassadors and care a lot about it. We're very proud of it. You should never take liberty for free. Everybody says, look, I would not want to live in China. Like, maybe they're advancing a lot in technology, but wow, I wouldn't want to live there. I don't see people drowning in rivers trying to get into China. Or they're trying to get out of China.
Right.
And again, it's the reverse is true in America. People, are trying to get in here all the time because of what we are and what we symbolize and what society here is versus anywhere else in the world. And so let's not forget that.
So you were talking about a little bit earlier about data centers, right? And nuclear fusion, this idea of nuclear fusion versus nuclear fission, right? So absolute clean energy. How close do you think we are to having true modularized, like clean nuclear fusion energy?
Not close. Unfortunately, there's a lot of optimism about mini nukes. They are 20 years away.
20 years away?
Before they even become economic. I mean, you're competing with 6 cents a kilowatt hour on natural gas.
Yeah.
Maybe 8, worst case. It's 10x that on a mini nuke. So, I mean, it doesn't make sense. But the technology will advance. It will be a solution in the future, but I would say best case 15 years. Then you got to convince some neighborhood, hey, I'm putting a nuke in here. Try that. Try getting a permit for that. That ain't going to
have a half a
change
dozen
in 20
right
years.
down the...
Nobody's going to say, hey, put some nukes in my neighborhood. That's going to be pretty damn hard. It's going to be a long slug.
Yeah.
And so I'm not even looking at that as an alternative for what I'm doing in data centers. I'm all nat gas, stranded nat gas, so I don't make anybody pay more in the county or community. And we build the turbines ourselves. We tap into the pipelines, and we provide extra power for the community.
How about rare earth? Are you involved in any rare earth materials?
I have some investments in other countries. There's only really one rare earth mine here. We've really ignored that because we've been importing most of it from Canada and China.
Yep.
And so I don't invest in China, but I certainly have investments in Canada. And I think every country should start thinking about what it takes to be competitive technologically. And a lot of that has to do with even base metals like gold. I mean, copper, uranium, rare earth, everything.
Yeah.
It's part of what people forgot about, and now it's a rude awakening.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think about the chip war? Who wins this chip war? And I guess it could morph 5 times the next 20 years. But NVIDIA has meteoric rise, right? And we get into 3D stacking and asynchronous and all these different types of chip designs. How do you think that morphs, over time and trying to reshore some of that manufacturing as well?
It's important to have chip wars because the winners stay ahead and the losers fade away. And that's exactly what happened to Intel. In the 90s, Intel was the El Supremo. And look at them today. They're being sold for car parts.
Right.
Companies come and go, but the race remains eternal. And so, now it's NVIDIA, AMD's catching up. I mean, I think it's important that these people try and compete and innovate, and may the best win. That is what makes America great, is competition, less regulation, entrepreneurship, capital markets that are private. I don't want the government choosing winners and losers. I was really unhappy when my tax dollars were given to an old crusty dog like Intel. I want to sell it for parts. It deserves to die. It did a horrible job for the last 10 years. What's wrong with letting it die? It's on life support, so let it go. But the point is, something, emerged that was better than it, and the market adopted to that. The other part of giving money to a dog like Intel, nobody wants to buy their products.
Right.
Why keep it alive?
Yeah. If you look out the next 3 to 5 years, what do you get the most excited about? Is it the reinvention of quote unquote kind of old school industries, or the emerging, burgeoning technologies that you see starting to come out that'll really get a foothold in 5 years? What are you excited about?
I'm very diversified in what I invest in, because I never know for sure what's going to stick. I'm pretty confident AI is going to be around in a much bigger way in the next 20 years, so I have plenty of investments in that. But what I enjoy the most is finding a great entrepreneur, backing them, and watching them, grow their business. I mean, it's so much energy comes out of that, so much fun, and it's very profitable. When you get a winner, you make a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I think, I do it for all of those reasons, but it also keeps me, busy. I mean, I want to be busy. I want to do interesting things. I don't want to live an ordinary life. I want to live an extraordinary life. And entrepreneurship is how I do that.
Absolutely. How big is your team? How many companies do you have at this point? How many investments?
Companies.
54?
So thousands of people in those.
Yeah.
My operating company is probably, in total, only 25 to 30 people, including the guys that we put on contract with us.
Right.
And we're a very tight-knit group, and we work all around the world. We have people in Abu Dhabi, in London, England, in LA, Boston, all over the place.
So the two most important things, right? It all comes down to talent and capital. And I've always thought that talent is more important, right? Having the right people, the right butts, the right seats. What, over the years of you starting businesses and investing and selling business, et cetera, how do you think about building teams? Like, what have any tools or thought processes that seem to work better than others to assemble the right people at the right time for the right job? Any thoughts to share there about team building?
Hire slowly. And I'll tell you a little trick I learned a few years ago, maybe almost 7 years ago. You're hiring a new CEO, a new CFO, a new COO, or head of social media. Don't hire them. Give them a contract for 6 months. Pay them 30% more, no stock options or anything, but 30% more than you pay them. Negotiate their deal if they're successful, then throw them into the fire with the team and see if it works out for them and for the team. And anytime during that 6 months, you can say, hey, we're going to pull the trigger with you. We like it. You're doing a great job. Everybody wants to work with you. And bingo, they're employees with stock options and everything else. But if it's when it doesn't work out, you're not hurting their chances to do something great somewhere else, because it's not a blemish on their resume.
Right, that's interesting.
It's just a 6 or 4 month or 3 month contract that you had, and they can tell somebody, hey, I'm not an employee, I was just and luckily you didn't hire them because they weren't going to work.
That's interesting. I like that a lot. What if you could solve one thing with innovation right now? If you wave a magic wand, AI had advanced to this moment to solve one thing, what would that be?
I would love to solve for, it sounds very boring, but bookkeeping and accounting. Because the only way you can be successful is to know where you stand every day with all of your businesses.
Yep.
I do a mark-to-market at 4:05 every day worldwide. How much cash did we bring in? How much did we send out? What are the valuations on our public properties? What worked, what didn't? But if I don't have that information, I can't make moves.
Financial hygiene is so critical.
I wish we didn't have to be so laborious, because the systems don't yet talk to each other in different countries, and so we have to do a lot of work to get this dashboard up. The dashboard is very simple. It's checking, for example, have we breached our covenants on concentration? Do we have more than 33% in real estate? Maybe some building just went on the market at a valuation much higher than we anticipated. I'd love to have that problem.
Yeah.
So we have to sell down something else.
Yeah.
We keep it at those ratios.
So are you doing that custom? Like you build that yourself, or is there a platform that...
No, I'm using various providers, and I have an internal team that integrates, but it is a total pain in the ass.
Yeah.
We just have to keep adding power and capacity to manage that information. And it's very complex because we now have crypto in the mix. Crypto doesn't price at 4 o'clock. It's pricing 24/7.
24/7.
So we have to integrate that into our compliance systems for our holdings in Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, and we just added a big position in SWI, which a lot of people haven't heard of, but it looks like it's going to be one of the winners on the blockchain for speed.
Which one is that?
It's called SWI, S-U-I. It's the guy, Evan Chang, who came out of Facebook.
Yes.
Remember when
Yes.
Facebook was doing a digital token?
Yeah.
He was the guy leading that team. He started a company called Miston. He is on fire right now. No one's heard of him yet, but he is going to win the speed race.
That's fascinating. So I play around a little bit personally with a crypto portfolio, and there's probably 20 or 30 in there. Of course, most of them is just a little bit. Like it's just sprinkling for fun, probably concentrated in a half a dozen. I think it totally makes sense.
Yeah.
And we'll only get more and more adoption, over the coming, I don't even think it's decades,
No,
years.
I think digital
or
payment systems are here to stay because, the Genius Act has passed. Congress has approved stablecoins backed by U.S. Treasury.
Yeah.
That's all positive, and we're going to get the same thing done soon with the Clarity Act, the Infrastructure Act on Bitcoin and Ethereum. But I think a portfolio approach makes sense. You just need 4 positions, not 10,000, and you'll capture 90% of the volatility and the upside and the alpha of crypto.
Yeah.
For me, I do Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, and the Miston, SWI product. 25% each.
Yeah.
I've done great.
I love it. We're coming to the end here. I would love to end with what we've talked about at the end of the fireside chat, where you talk about how you allocate and spend time, signal versus noise. I think it's so powerful, the power of threes. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. It's a very basic concept. The idea is that for every entrepreneur, every manager, anybody has 3 things they have to get done each 18-hour day. Not 10 things, 3 things. It's usually 3 to 5 max.
Yep.
And you got to get those done. Not tomorrow, not next week, today. And so all the energy that once you've identified them, you have to spend your energy on getting them done, and that's called the signal. And the noise is everything that stops you from executing on that mandate, that stops you from getting the 3 things done. That's the noise. And so you want a ratio of 80% signal, 20% noise. Now, if the ratio falls below 70-30, you're going to fail.
Yeah.
So you got to get the 3 things done that you got to get done, and nothing can stop you. And a lot of people get pissed off at that because you're not going to give them time because you don't want more noise in the ratio.
Right.
You want more signal.
Yeah.
If somebody comes up and says, hey, I want to show you this video or this TikTok thing, the answer is no. I'm not done with my 3 things.
Right.
And I'll look at this afterwards.
Yes.
And that's the plan.
I love it. Anything we didn't touch on in this podcast that you want to share with our audience?
I think we got it all.
That's awesome. Well, Kevin O'Leary, thank you so much for joining the show.
I really enjoyed it.
I had
you
an
very much.
amazing time.
Take care. Thanks.
All right.
All right.
Oh.
This episode was brought to you by Rally, the Global Cross-Sector Innovation Conference. Learn more at rallyinnovation.com.